One of the first things I remember asking our class was, a lot of you guys are graduating, in a few months. Do you know what you're gonna do?
Yeah.
And by and large, like everybody's like, I have no, idea. Yeah. And so we really use that class as an opportunity to say, like, what you want to learn here is going to translate and should translate into what you're going to see in the real world. And I remember you being really, really curious and not waiting for,
permission or whatever.
Right. You're like,
group. Yeah.
Hey, if you have doors you can go open, like,
Yep.
tell me. And we immediately kind of started that dialogue around, like, what do you want to be?
And I remember you were at the Gates Foundation, and I think it was one of my first professors I really noticed that had sort of your foot in both worlds. And I remember you made the offer of, hey, I'm at the Gates Foundation. If you guys want to come check it out, shoot me an email. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I have the chance to go, one, see the campus, and two, just interact in that environment.
Right.
So that's what I distinctly remember. I was like, what are you gonna do? And then it was like, here's this invitation to go and test it out. Like, what does this environment feel like?
And you'd be shocked, like very few people actually say yes to that type of offer, which is silly.
Yeah.
And so you did, and it was at that point that I realized, like, okay, something's different about Andrea, and I think the curiosity you have of, I'm gonna actually do something with this degree, and I want to, jump into the world kind of head first, and so you did. What I appreciated as we kind of moved from, all right, like school's about ready to come to an end, to, hey, job offers are starting to come in, and you were interviewing and had awesome grades and were a student athlete, which at a place like PLU puts you on a different kind of level than some other people that we might be competing against, right? Sure. And that word compete really resonated because you got it, where others were, I think, very kind of passive and were maybe afraid to compete. And I remember being in Las Vegas at dinner with a colleague, and she said, hey, I have an opening for a position on my team at Nike, and it was instant. Yeah, and that's when I grabbed my phone and like FaceTimed you, and you had your glasses on, and you're like, why are you calling me at 10:30 at night? And you met Sarah for the very first time, and that started a very cool relationship.
Yeah, and just like the transition of mentorship, Sarah was just such a perfect boss for like providing such an incubator, so sort of going from an academic mentorship, but also having sort of the world, your foot in both worlds, to then Sarah, who was kind of the opposite blend of being sort of deep in business, but also sort of still academic adjacent in a lot of the side hustles that she had.
Yeah.
And so it was this perfect transition of sort of really academically focused to still having this sort of support when I transitioned to the business world.
Right.
So
which is a big jump.
It was seamless.
But I mean, a big jump. I mean, I think for you to, we would read about Nike.
Exactly.
And then next thing you know, you're interviewing at Nike.
Yep.
And 5 years later, you're getting calls from PLU saying, hey, can you talk to so-and-so about Nike? Which I think is kind of the beauty of this journey, right? Is that, not that long ago, you and I were in a classroom down there. And now we're back, and we're in very different spots, career-wise. But you're also helping people, get started in their career, which is really neat. And then I remember you said, I'm also getting an offer from a company in Seattle. Yeah. And you can bring my pet to work. And I remember sitting here thinking, it was super hard because I, at that point, like took off my professor hat and just said, like, as a friend, if I was going to counsel you of go to Nike or go to some startup, I would have said go to Nike for what that does for your resume, what that does for your own brand. And you literally can take that with you anywhere. And that was really hard, I think, at the time. And so trying to deliver that to you carefully, but not like tamper your enthusiasm. I remember that being an internal kind of conflict I was having when we were talking.
Yeah, as I reflect, I feel like you got that perfectly of like, certainly the sign of a good mentor was I feel like you never gave me the answer. And even to this day, as I come back and go, should I pursue this job or should I go back and get an MBA? All of these sort of trade-offs. You always sort of get your thumb on the heart of it and sort of ask the hard questions to sort of peel it back. And I feel like you've always sort of led me a good trail to sort of navigate it myself, which was always super great. And for Nike, just the complexity of any organization that large, I just have such an appreciation for so many different, just the dynamics and the levers that you can pull within that environment that you just, you can't get sometimes in smaller companies that certainly feel so translatable if I was to go to a smaller organization or a similar large organization. I'm not only taking apart the brand or the product experience.
What do you feel like, though, you learned at Nike that you did not learn
yeah,
at
absolutely.
PLU, or you're like, man, if I could like rewind the clock, what would I have wished I would have been armed with when I went into the workforce?
One, kicking myself to sort of jump on the opportunity that I took on with you. I think there are a lot of professors who are willing to sort of say, hey, I have relationships or I have connections, and I think I did that sparingly. I would have done that more, or cashed in on that a little bit more. And just the real world application. I think sort of that case study, sort of really digging in, is really what's been most valuable for me. And I think that I laugh sort of at kind of what for our capstone class, what I put forward. I think we were assessing like Delta Airlines or something, but so much of that really is just translatable and really makes it real.
It's real. I remember you coming back to one of my grad school classes, and I was super proud. And you got to stand up in the same classroom that we were in when you were a student and talk about, hey, this is what I do at Nike. And here you have all these graduate students, many of which are employed at the Amazons and Microsofts and Boeings and Costco's. And here you are, 24, just crushing it in front of a lot of grad students going, yeah, I'm at Nike. And they're like, can I call you to talk about Nike? I was super proud. And I'm still proud. But to kind of watch that, full circle. Nike aside, like take away the company, you more so than most displayed kind of a level of rigor that is going to take you wherever you need to go. Yeah, and I think part me leaning in, but a lot of it was having those kind of coaches and mentors who sort of would steer me. I just call it like professional hygiene, but it's just so much of how you show up, how you talk to somebody, how you come prepared, that you sort of can maximize those moments, and then you get the grace to sort of push the limits a little bit more. If you sort of cover those bases really strong and you just nail them, I've always felt like people are saying, give me a little more and let me stand up in front of the group, or let me have a little bit more airtime. And so just really leaning into that. And with time comes polish, certainly. And so I felt good coming back to PLU and talking about change management, which coming out of PLU, I took a job I didn't really know the field intimately, right? I sort of knew it conceptually, and being able to come back and talk, hopefully articulately about what that is and how that's sort of a growing field and a really important field, even if you don't formally do it as a practitioner, was really fun. What you're learning here at PLU can and does translate.